I'm not extremely well versed in the children's entertainment of today. In fact, I'm pretty far out of touch with children's entertainment and animation. So as a start, I jumped into the sugar-laden rabbit hole of kids animation on YouTube. I thought it was a good idea. I'm not really sure why. It was basically the same premise as my Australian animation video, and that one was actually a ton of fun. This experience, however, was less fun. I feel tempted to drop into that exaggerated YouTube tone. You know, there are those channels that are based around watching media they know is bad, and it starts to feel like the metagame is to see who can be the most extreme and dramatic in their descriptions of what it was like to watch such and such terrible show or movie. And for the creator and audience alike, it's very comfortable to criticize objectively bad work because it makes us all feel much better about ourselves, even if we've never actually done anything noteworthy in comparison. But even so, despite all that, I feel this urge to talk about what an awful time I had with most of the cartoons I watched for this video. But I'm kind of tripping on my ears already. Let's back up for some context. Let's compare, in a very generalized sense, children's YouTube to the vanilla YouTube experience. Obviously, normal YouTube just has some incredibly trashy content for you to look at and some of the loudest thumbnails in existence. And you'd think that in comparison to that, it would be pretty easy for sort of the children-oriented side of YouTube to be relatively okay, relatively squeaky clean or something like that. But my overall impression of YouTube content meant to appeal to children really hasn't been a favorable one so far. YouTube's handling of children's content has been a flammable issue of its own for a while now, and if you were active here on the site back in 2019, then you will remember the FTC YouTube kerfuffle that led to serious changes on the platform. I don't want to get into all of it right now, but basically the FTC and the New York Attorney General went after YouTube, said, hey, you're doing something bad with regards to collecting children's data. Can't do that anymore, but it sort of blew up into this huge thing where the FTC was being kind of performative and public about like, we want to do everything we can to make YouTube and the internet in general safe for kids, or relatively safe for kids. YouTube got fined like $170 million, drop in the bucket, right? Absolutely nothing. But it led to big changes. You now have to mark every single uploaded video whether it is meant for kids or whether it's not meant for kids. That changes obviously who the video is shown to, but it also alters monetization options if you have those enabled for your channel. So long story short, it was a huge issue at the time. Other people have done really excellent sort of summarization videos on it, so you can check those out if you want. But the thing here, and one of the reasons this was sticking in my head when I started on this project, is that all of that stuff, everything done as a response to that case was supposedly to protect kids on YouTube and to make YouTube a safer place for children. Okay, is the entertainment on YouTube meant for kids actually good? In particular, I wanted to focus on animation, of course, since that's what I tend to talk about. And the results were... Well, the results are this video. I'm definitely not saying that YouTube is outright unsafe. However, I do think that children's entertainment of quality is generally better for kids. And a lot of the stuff I found on YouTube for kids, I would not say that it's of quality. That's a very gentle way to broach the topic. And this might sound like a setup for a massive teardown of all kids animation on YouTube, but not everything I watched was terrible, thankfully. In fact, there are just some popular videos in this category that I think are wonderful. There are also a number of established television shows in this list. They just happen to post on YouTube as well. But there is some trash here, and I wanted to establish why it's worth our time and effort to criticize the low-quality children's animation on YouTube, even beyond just saying, wow, isn't that awful? And hopefully I've done a half-decent job of that. I tried to pick a variety of key shows, but there was no chance that I'd be able to cover all the major players. But I think that's it. Let's, saddle up, I guess. That's not a catchphrase at all. Tutu Boy is a show from Video Gyan. It's supposedly based on Sanskrit. I don't know how to pronounce it. Videogyan calls itself a new age media company producing kids content, animation videos such as nursery rhymes and cartoon shows. The company is apparently headquartered in India. It's fair to say that Videogyan's shows have a specific style to them, especially the character models. We could maybe call it sort of the murder doll aesthetic. And once I started doing research for the video, I knew that I needed to put Tutu Boy at the front of the line here because it just speaks for itself. The visuals, this level of CG modeling and textures and animation that you might see in like local ads. 800-588-2300 Empire. Today. The lighting just feels completely stock, and most of the time watching this show feels like traveling back to 2002 and not in a fun way. Tutu Boy is your grade school classmate who only bothered showing up to book report day because his parents told him that if he could hold on to a solid D, he could buy a knife at the next county fair. The storylines are extremely basic, which isn't a sin unto itself, but the lack of depth can feel almost constricting after a while. There's one episode where Tutu Boy finds a spider in his bathtub, and then at the end, there are a lot more of them. Then the episode's over. Let's just map that out in a 3-act structure. Basically, all of the music consists of variations on a single theme. The sound design is not great, and there are plenty of times when it feels like they didn't bother to line up a sound with a corresponding action. Also, lip syncing is just not a thing here. The pacing is erratic, and at least for me, it starts to get uncomfortable. The story pacing is very fast, but a lot of the animations are fast too, and then sometimes the editing just adds to the feeling of a carousel that never stops, especially when the music is going at full force. Another note worth mentioning is that the like-dislike ratios on Tutu Boy videos are pretty darn bad, often getting close to 50-50. Even so, the official main Videogyan channel, named Videogyan Nursery Rhymes, Kids Songs, and Cartoons, please note that the company has over 10 different channels in different languages, has earned the Diamond Play button given to channels with over 10 million subscribers. The channel currently has 10.4 million subscribers. Videogyan is headed up by someone named Vishal TM. Apparently that's his full name, I don't know. My research led to this interesting article about Videogyan receiving the Diamond Play button. I'm a little bit suspicious of this article. It's not that I think the information is incorrect, but it comes off to me as a paid placement. So I've worked in public relations for a few years now, and while I can't talk about the specifics of my job, I can tell you that plenty of public figures, or just anyone who needs some PR to foster a certain public image, can pay some money to have some website publish an article about them. And that article is likely to be very kind to the subject, as opposed to actual journalism, which is supposed to deliver facts without an inordinate amount of editorializing. Think of it as sponsored content, essentially, or what we used to call native advertising, except they're not disclosing the fact that it's sponsored. Long story short, this article here feels like PR. I can basically guarantee it for legal reasons. No, I'm not guaranteeing it. The poor writing is one tip-off, and another one is how the article only ever has positive things to say about the company. But even if this is just marketing, the article delivers some valuable pieces of information, maybe unintentionally. For example, it explains that Videogyan started out making generic how-to and info videos, and then, this is great, began churning out animated videos, including kids' rhymes videos. CEO TM throws out this gem. We are extremely proud to be one of the first studios in the country to bring CG animation on YouTube that matches the international quality. Oh boy. Oh, Mr. TM. So the rest of the article is inappropriately affectionate towards Videogyan, but even quotes from the CEO seem to confirm my suspicions about the company being just a trashy business venture run by people who don't give a shit. Because look, regardless of whether this article was paid marketing on behalf of Videogyan, this was an opportunity for the CEO to give the impression that his company has a passion for creating kids content, or that the team really cares about making kids happy. But instead, Instead, we get photos like this and quotes like this. Kids love to be entertained and have fun while watching any content. We'd love to see the smile and laugh on their faces when they watch our content. And, this is a great quote, the consumption rate has increased a lot, especially during the pandemic, but at the same time, it looks like people are hesitant in buying subscriptions and advertisers are cautious in spending because of uncertainty. We are hopeful that things will soon get back to pre-COVID times. Oh, cool. Yeah, it seems like your aims are very wholesome and pure, man. And I get that people build businesses to make money, but Video Gyan and Tutu Boy are special to me because both the content itself and the behind-the-scenes info are completely transparent. All that sort of mean stuff I've said about the show so far, it's not just me being cynical, I don't think. It really seems like when we look behind the curtain, it's just that bad. It's almost impressive how little these guys seem to care about how they're seen by the public. They're basically just standing out here going, what? We're not doing nothing illegal, so what are you gonna do about it? It's just transparent sleaze, and according to those ratios, millions of viewers, most of whom are probably kids, they don't like this stuff either. I know trash when I see it, and Tutu Boy fits the bill. Masha and the Bear is another series that I hadn't heard of previously. But yeah, it turns out that this one Masha video is the 6th most viewed video in YouTube history at the time of writing, with 4.5 billion views. It's also the most popular video on the site that's not a music video. The series was created by Oleg Guzovkov, who is a guy. He's Russian. It's actually a television show, but like some of the other entries on this list, the folks behind it realized that there are enormous advantages to making this stuff available for viewing, especially outside of Russia, for reasons. I don't want to do another deep dive into a subpar production company with cynical motivations, so let's talk instead about the show itself. Well, it feels shockingly similar to Tutu Boy and some other detritus from Video Gyan. Character movement is jerky, the sound design is similarly amateurish, and individual episodes are pretty short. Unlike Tutu Boy, Masha and the Bear actually has language at times, like words. I guess it also helps that Masha is the only human character. As far as I've seen in the episodes I've watched, the animals just don't talk. Now, here's the big twist. I don't hate Masha and the Bear nearly as much as Tutu Boy. That reasoning mostly comes down to some of the technical aspects. For one, I don't absolutely hate all of the character models, probably because most of them aren't human. Some of the animals are kind of cute and expressive. Also, the environments here definitely come out on top. It gives the impression that each environment was actually created specifically for the show, regardless of whether that's actually true. I don't know about that. The forest settings are nice enough, I guess, and the lighting can feel much cozier and contemporary than what I saw in some of these other shows. The music, not great, but at least there are different themes. I'm already running out of steam on this project, and I just took a 3-day break. Okay, what's next? Oddbods is a Singaporean television series that has done quite well on YouTube. Once again, we have that technique where characters don't speak using actual words, which means you don't have to translate or dub or caption anything for international distribution. One summary I found online described the show as taking a look at everyday life through the eyes of 7 distinct personalities, all bundled up in bright furry suits, which is an unfortunate bit of phrasing. Of the 3 shows I've talked about so far, Oddbods is probably the most charming. It still has the awful Mickey Mousing music, though the quality feels higher than that of both previous shows, and the environments are frequently uninteresting and borderline claustrophobic to an adult viewer like me, who doesn't enjoy feeling trapped inside a kid's show. But there's some fun things happening here. The Oddbods themselves even kind of feel like legally distinct minions for ease of marketability, but they do have personalities, and those personalities aren't immediately grating. This is probably the most subjective comment I could share, but it feels to me like the production team cares about the show. Oddbods. I don't hate it. Okay, so now we have the Little Angel show franchise, potentially, I guess. Its bread and butter seems to be nursery rhymes and sing-alongs. This was another show that was difficult to research. I found a press release attributing the channel Little Angel to Valnet, which is a Montreal-based company that has proudly acquired and developed a variety of online brands and YouTube channels, such as The Richest, Screen Rant, and The Taco, whatever that is. So it's one of those companies that buys up crazy popular channels and milks them for all they're worth. Cool. I don't think Little Angel has consistent characters, and the characters, if they even have names, aren't the real draw. I saw a lot of the same character models, but they pretty much always just get down to the singing, and that's the episode. Now, there's a lot we could get into on the specific topic of YouTube music channels for kids, and why it's terrible that they only use the most basic scales and chord progressions common to the West, but Tantacruel already made an excellent video on the topic, so just watch that one in another tab, I guess. But in summary, it's strange and kind of irresponsible to continue to promote this idea that music for children needs to be simplistic and only in major scales, etc. Perhaps based on the assumption that tiny children have already had dominant Western concepts about music theory sanded into their brains somehow. Maybe they come from the factory that way, I don't know. How about the animation then? Well, it's cheap and dull. It's a return back to the bottom of the barrel here. Choo-Choo TV. Okay, this should be a quick one. Choo-Choo TV is another channel that does nursery rhymes. They have a horrifying logo. They have millions of subscribers. Their like-dislike ratios are rough, and it's another property from India, specifically from CEO and creative director Vinoth Chandar, and he should be ashamed. The quality really takes a nosedive here. This show, series, I guess, looks downright bad, and the sheer number of stock sound effects is kind of embarrassing. Arpo the Robot, or its full title, Arpo the Robot for All Kids, is a South Korean series. It's about a robot that takes care of kids. Personally, I think Robot Babysitter would have been a much better title. The quality is awful, and once again, it looks a whole lot like the other worst of the worst shows on the list. Maybe some CG animation folks out there can help us out here. Do these assets and environments all look like they come from the same program? Are these like stock assets? Is this all being made in some kind of freeware? Or is this just the result when a show gets zero budget and animators are treated like trash? Really bad ratios on these videos, over 5 million subscribers on the English channel. You get the picture. This channel is called Official Pink Panther, and it has 16.5 million subscribers. They upload twice a week, and when you follow the Amazon link in the description that says own the series, that corresponds to Pink Panther and Pals, which had one season back in 2010 with 26 double episodes. But the channel has way more than 52 videos, and they seem to offer Pink Panther cartoons from different eras as well. So I guess it's not just that show. There's stuff produced by Mirish in the 60s as well, and interestingly, these videos, regardless of time period, have solid like-dislike ratios, far better than any of the other stuff we've talked about so far, and that gives me hope. Now, the animation here isn't stunning, but for one thing, it's not CG. I know that's not an accomplishment in itself, but at least it's different. It doesn't come off as lazy, even though a lot of this stuff was literally made decades ago. But hey, instead of letting all this material sit on the shelf, they put it to use. That just seems like good business. And the channel still gets to benefit from having very little dialogue. And there's just a lot of old stuff too. There's an argument you'll hear about how kids today probably wouldn't like shows and movies from previous decades, especially really old properties. But here on YouTube, based on the information we have, it seems like plenty of kids are enjoying the older Pink Panther cartoons just about as much as the relatively new ones. And I think that's kind of neat, even though I always hated Pink Panther too, I guess. I hated the old movies. I hated that remake. Henry Mancini's alright though. His stuff definitely sounds rooted in 60s trends, but it also somehow expands into sort of timeless territory as well, somehow. Anyway. Peep in the Big Wide World is an American-Canadian TV series based on a 1988 short film of the same name, which itself was based on a short from 1962 called The Peep Show. 9-minute stories, 2 to a batch, and some pretty excellent voice acting in this one, although it'll always throw me off when I hear an adult voice actor alongside a bunch of actual child voice actors. It came up in that Blinky Bill show as well. Also, Joan Cusack is the narrator, which is fun. The official channel only has about 500,000 subscribers, subscribers, pretty low compared to what we've been seeing so far, and the like-dislike ratios are pretty okay. I haven't found any that are half and half. The series also claims to teach kids some really basic scientific concepts, so maybe it's also educational, technically. So this refers specifically to the Mickey Mouse YouTube channel, which has 5.76 million subscribers. Their most popular videos are 2D Mickey cartoons that are generally under 4 minutes each. I do not know whether these episodes were created specifically for the YouTube channel, but apparently it's a show that's also available on Disney+. Modern pacing, modern character designs, but still plenty of sort of classic physical comedy to go around. Despite the name and obvious focus of the channel, it has some Cars shorts here as well. The like-dislike ratios are about average based on what we've seen for the other shows. But hey, it's another show that has a fairly high level of production value, and plenty of these shorts are fun. It also helps that they got a better voice actor for Mickey than they had in that last Kingdom Hearts game. There's not too much else to say here. The shorts are fun, and I'm not surprised that many of them get millions of views. So I didn't just want to talk about the shows and channels themselves and harp on about the worst ones. So this is the part where I need to come up with some sort of overall message, some connective tissue that gives meaning to this shockingly time-intensive process. Is children's animation on YouTube terrible? No, not all of it. And it's really not all that surprising to find so much garbage in this category either. It's YouTube, after all. The promotion of trashy content via deeply flawed algorithms is kind of their whole brand at this point, and the COPPA situation made it very clear that YouTube only cares about child viewers enough to avoid litigation. And those changes they made back in 2019 were much more about covering their ass than actually doing anything to improve the way in which kids interact with YouTube content. YouTube doesn't care about your kids, and it doesn't care about you either. There's nothing illegal about Tutu Boy or Little Angel. Bad media isn't against the law, as far as I know. There's even a part of me that thinks the consumption of bad media is almost just part of the childhood experience. I'm sure all of us watched some really awful stuff when we were kids. Did it do us any permanent damage? I don't know. But if you are a parent and you're willing to take some advice from a stranger on the internet who doesn't have any kids of his own, I would not recommend that your children be allowed to watch shows like these. More specifically, I think letting kids watch this kind of content for hours and hours and hours is far more risky than letting them catch just an episode or two. But that's easier said than done too, isn't it? Children of a certain age aren't that picky about quality, and they could easily get hooked on one of these subpar Empire carpet cartoons. And once a kid finds a show or movie they really like, they're probably going to want to watch and rewatch it dozens or hundreds of times. I mean, I'm living proof of that. The Lion King and Aladdin are just seared into my brain wrinkles for life. And you might find yourself in a situation where your child already loves video gyan for some reason, and you might try to argue with them about it, but that's just unpleasant, and it takes up a lot of time when you just need to get the groceries out of the car. So let's just treat this whole thing like drugs in a 1980s Nancy Reagan PSA. Don't even let them start. Don't let them get their adorable but also very grubby hands on this kind of trash. But that part's tricky too, since you have to watch their watching habits closely. And YouTube has autoplay enabled most of the time, making it even easier for quality videos to lead to the ugly ones without further input. One of your only means of recourse here is to keep your kids on the YouTube Kids app, where it's a lot easier to block entire channels. But even then, you'll have to update those preferences pretty often, I feel like. And it gets even worse when you consider that YouTube Kids content can also have terrible live action stuff as well. Have you ever heard of Kids Diana Show? I could have made a whole video just on these fucks. It's a Ukrainian channel, and basically this kid's parents have, can I say coerced? They made their young daughter get out there and earn cash on the web, and now it's the 5th most subscribed to channel in the world. And of course they also have this child advertise toys to other children, and the quality of the videos is pathetic and annoying, and most of them are in this ugly McMansion where the family apparently live. Jesus Christ, this has been draining. At the end of the day, most of us are already boycotting all these channels, which has no impact at all, clearly. It's really up to parents at this point. I know that parents don't need any more to worry about, but please consider paying close attention to what your kids are watching, especially if it's on YouTube. And I never thought I would say this, but honestly, hooking your kids up to the Disney Plus IV is probably about 50 times safer than letting them roam free on YouTube, even the kids version. YouTube has only not been collecting and selling your children's data for a couple of years at this point, and they still allow a shocking amount of mop bucket content to not only make it onto the platform, but also to thrive. Once again, not everything on YouTube that's aimed at children is bad. Some of it is quite good. Some of it is just decent TV shows that know they can reach a wider audience on the site, but every decent show shares its borders with the worst of the worst, and I just don't think it's worth taking that gamble. And for any non-parents out there, is there a better word for them? Not just people who aren't parents? I hope you've gotten some kind of entertainment out of these brief clips of wastoid animation. I'm gonna go wash my brain now. If you have any tips for that, let me know. But until the next one comes around the corner, thanks for stopping by.